Chapter 19 New Challenges. The last thing that Aghanim remembered was being dragged down into the blackness of Lake Hylia by some kind of fish monster. Maybe a Zora? Whatever it was, the robed wizard remembered looking up to see the light of the surface getting farther away, and then he must have lost consciousness because he woke up somewhere else. Gasping to take in a breath while coughing out some water, he looked around to find that he was surrounded by total darkness. There were sounds, though, constantly dripping water coming from all directions, along with the soft echo that followed each one. His head was pounding, and his broken arm wasn't helping with its dull, throbbing pain. But before Aghanim could do anything about that, he needed to figure out where he was. The best way to do that was to produce flame in his hand, so he went to raise his good arm but found that for some reason it was stretched above his head. This made no sense until a ball of flame materialized in his palm, and he realized that he was hanging upside down. His feet were stuck to the ceiling with some kind of muck-looking substance, and he was just starting to look around when the orange light illuminated a figure moving towards him. It was another Zora, clawed and webbed hands reaching out for him, and mouthful of sharp teeth opened wide for the kill. The creature grabbed him, and out of reflex, the fireball was launched right into its face, causing the Zora to shriek in pain and surprise. The room went dark again once the flames dispersed, and Aghanim produced another one just in time to see the creature running out of the room, still shrieking as it vanished from sight. Not wanting to be stuck like that if the creature came back, the robed wizard aimed his hand at his feet and tossed the fireball, again returning the room to darkness when it dispersed. The muck must have been destroyed because he felt himself falling the moment everything went dark, only to crash hard onto the wet stone floor an instant later. The water couldn't have been any more than an inch deep, but it was flowing since he could feel it moving as he slowly struggled to his feet. Another fireball in his hand bathed the room in a dim orange flickering light, and now he finally had a chance to look around. The walls and floor were made of large cut stones, meaning that this place was not a natural cave, and then he saw the bones. Animal bones of all sizes littered the floor, but there were also some that looked like they came from people, along with a few cracked skulls that confirmed this. Now looking up at the ceiling, he noticed several more muck patches like the ones that had held his feet, and it was only after seeing that some of them still had shoes and boots attached to them that Aghanim realized that this place was a larder. The robed wizard had been meant for a meal just like all of the poor people who had come before him, and that's when he heard it. It was another shriek like the one the Zora had made, but this time it was not alone, and it was coming closer. There was no time to heal his arm and other injuries, since using that spell took time and concentration, so he turned and moved out of the room through the opposite door as quickly as he could. Meanwhile, in the eastern forest, Link would have been lying if he said he didn't enjoy tormenting his captive, but the fool had to admit that he had brought it on himself. After all, this lunatic had appeared out of nowhere and tried to kill him, and then started claiming to be royalty after being defeated. So what choice did the young man have but to drag him for a while? To be fair, he had warned his captive several times to stop talking, but he just kept on doing it until Link couldn't take it anymore. So, making good on his warning, the young man spurred the horse and dragged the would-be prince across the mud-covered coastline. Fortunately for his captive, they had already been close to the edge of the forest by the time this happened, so it was only for a moment or two when the screaming fool had to endure it before they stopped again. Link didn't really want to hurt him, so he wasn't about to drag his captive across the root-covered forest trails, but that didn't mean he had to say all this to his captive. Thankfully, he seemed to have had enough dragging, so without saying anything, the would-be prince got up and walked until they reached the cave where Impa was waiting. Hopefully, Aghanim had returned as well, because as much as he didn't like his captive, Link had to admit he was a talented fighter. "You are going to pay for this, ruffian," his captive said, as he was untethered from the horse. "Knight of Hyrule or no, I will have you flogged for a week, and then you—" His words were stopped as Link hooked his foot behind his captive while pushing him backwards, and since his wrists and ankles were still tied, there was nothing to stop him from falling on his back in the mud once more. The young man then took out the silver sword and held the tip at his captive's throat. "Were you saying something again?" he asked. "You know, even if you somehow were a prince, that means nothing in this part of Hyrule. You tried to kill me, which makes you my enemy. But good thing for you, I'm not a murderer. Now get up." Pulling his captive to his feet and pushing him toward the cave entrance, Link was happy to be out of the rain after so long. It was warm inside the cave, and it smelled like something was cooking, but there was no sign of Aghanim. Impa, however, was there, and the expression on her face said that she was a little more than surprised to see the two of them walking in as they did.
"Link, who is that with Prince Facade?" the old woman stammered. "Your Highness, Link, what is going on here?"
"This lunatic attacked me in the forest," Link explained. "He tried to steal the chest you sent me for, and then he had started screaming about being a... What did you just call him?" Gasping again and hurrying up to the captive, Impa quickly untied him before leading this person, who apparently really was Prince Facade, over to where he could sit down. The old woman gave out several apologies for the way he had been treated, but that wasn't enough for the prince, who pulled away from her after a short distance in order to face the young man again. "Yes, I am really Prince Facade of Arcadia," the prince said angrily as he approached, "and now I am going to teach you a lesson in how to treat your..." Link had already had quite enough of this person's ranting, so instead of listening further, he interrupted the speech by holding out the silver sword so the tip was once again at the still unarmed prince's throat. "Well, excuse me, prince," the young man replied just as angrily. "You attacked me, and tried to steal from me, and most importantly, I don't see any guards around. That means there's nothing stopping me from taking you outside and whipping you with my best." "You see what a brigand he is, Impa?" Facade asked while backing up a little. "And there in his hand, there is the proof that he is nothing but a common forest bandit. He stole my family's artifacts. He turned my own horse against me, and then he dragged me through the mud. It's no wonder I thought him one of Gargamel's minions." "For the last time," Link seethed. "Who in the hell is Gargamel?"
"That is enough, both of you!"
the old woman yelled as she got between them.
"You two ought to be ashamed of yourselves, carrying on like this while poor Zelda is Ganondorf's prisoner. Now, you are obviously both on the same quest to rescue her, so you boys can either shake hands and start working together, or do you want King Harkinian to hear all about how you were fighting like children instead of finding his daughter?"
The last thing Link wanted was for the King of Hyrule to be upset at him, so with an angry huff he dropped the silver sword at Facade's feet while keeping his hand on the hilt of his own sword just in case. It seemed like the prince didn't want Harkinian angry at him either, so he picked up his sword and sheathed it without incident. Well, it was a start, but that didn't mean that Link was happy about him being here. At least when Aghanim got back, they would outnumber Facade in case he decided to act foolish again. "Impa," the young man asked while taking a quick look outside the cave, "where is Aghanim?" Meanwhile, near the Lost Woods. As it had done before, the whirlwind spun Miranda around several times, and she was somewhere else when it vanished. It took a moment for her to get her bearings, but after seeing the red-leaved trees and the matching colored shrubs, she realized that she was near the Lost Woods to the west. There were certainly worse places to end up, and anything was better than staying at Spectacle Rock, but she had hoped that the recorder would have taken her back to Port Hylia. At least there she could have warned her father, but then again it was now Ganondorf who was trapped, so long as he didn't have another one. Either way, it appeared that she had to walk back to town, and it was quite a ways from where she was. It crossed Miranda's mind to use the recorder again, but there would be a chance it would take her back to Spectacle Rock, and she doubted that Ganondorf would be as easy to escape from a second time. So, taking a moment to slip the recorder down in her boot, she was about to start walking when she had to duck down behind the red bushes in order to avoid being seen by a large group of patrolling moblins. One or two of them wouldn't have been a problem to fight off, but there were so many of them, and even if she managed to get away, she couldn't risk word of her location getting back to their master. Not only that, but the sorcerer was probably already putting out a reward for her capture. This meant that the best thing for her to do was hide until they left, but where? There were plenty of shrubs, but she would have to move each time a moblin came close, and her only other option seemed to be a small pond. No, it wasn't a pond at all, but a runoff point for the flood valve that she only saw because of how much it was raining. The flood valves were placed around Lake Hylia in order to prevent flooding by draining excess water that rose up too high, then allowed it to flow through the ancient tunnels that had been used to transport supplies during the old wars, and finally poured it out harmlessly in places like this. Miranda had no intention of going down there, but maybe she could hide in the drain's opening until the moblins passed. Waiting until the creatures turned away, She hunched down and crept past the bushes, sloshed through the large puddle, and climbed up into the drain pipe just enough for her to be hidden in the shadows. Then she bumped into something and didn't even have time to see what it was before it grabbed onto her with a clawed and webbed hand. The creature then pulled her farther into the darkness, and she couldn't help but scream as they were suddenly sliding down a slippery, sloping passage that took her down, down, into the darkness.